Hey, this is Trail from Crossing the Trail, coming to you on my very, very high-tech phone. Anyway, don't forget, subscribe and like and all that. Okay. What I'm going to talk about today is a thing called perspective and what does and doesn't affect whether or not God is using an organization. I want you to imagine for a moment, let's say Vatican City in the Holy See. What would you say if the leader in Vatican City was having people killed so he could have an affair with their wife? What would you say if within Vatican City the leader was allowing people to set up altars to pagan deities and worship them there in the name of tolerance? What would you say if he was allowing them to even perform rituals of a reproductive nature by those altars as worship to their god? Pretty bad, huh? What would you say if in St. Peter's he was allowing them, over in the sides to put up, say, a Buddha or an altar, or say, let's get real graphic, an Asherah pole. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's not good. But big phallic idols to worship. What would you say if the king or the pope said, we're going to set up a pagan idol in the Sistine Chapel. We're just going to start worshiping that. Because we seem to have better luck when that happens. What would you say? Well, hopefully you'd object. But what are the ramifications? Would it mean that the church was no longer true? Well, those things I've described were all things done by kings of Israel and Judah. Every one of them. And worse. We won't even get into the time they were eating children and also conducting human sacrifices in the holy city. Yeah, how would you feel if the Pope had children being sacrificed to Molech? And those were horrible things. And you know what? God judged them for that. But you know what they also were? They also continued to be God's chosen people. It didn't deter or alter the fact that they were still God's chosen people and still the avenue through which he brought Messiah into the world to save us all. Even Jesus said in John 4 to the woman at the well in Samaria, salvation is of the Jews. So am I saying some of the things that are going on now or that have gone on in history are no big deal? Oh, definitely not. You see, whenever those things have happened, just like they happened in ancient Israel, there was judgment and God cleaned house. And their numbers were greatly reduced, but he started over. Eventually even taking them into captivity, and then they had to come back and rebuild the temple, rebuild the wall. They had to start over. God is willing to start over with his organization, with his people, his chosen people on the earth. I can tell you, in history, whenever the church gets lax and bloated and powerful with worldly power or with worldly philosophy, God sends saints. He did it, in the 400s and 500s. He did it in the thousands. He did it in the 1500s. He'll do it again. But here's the key. With all of its flaws and all of the horrible things that have gone on and sometimes still go on, it's still his church. In a way, that's why he judges it. It's his to judge. So as hard as it is, and This afflicts me quite often. As hard as it is to throw up my hands and give up and say, there's no way this is the truth. Horrible people doing horrible things don't change the fact that Jesus came and started his church. He built his church on the foundation of him and the apostles, Jesus being the chief cornerstone. And he gave the keys of authority as his prime minister to Peter. So, it's hard. We continue to pray. There was a faithful remnant in Israel. There's a faithful remnant now. But what they didn't do was leave the country and go join another country or go start their own country. Or they wouldn't have been part of God's chosen people. So we don't have that option either. Because if everybody leaves, if all the good people leave, nothing's ever going to change. And so, it is what it is. We pray what we pray. And just like, despite all the horrible things they did, the Jews did not cease to be God's chosen people. Despite all the horrible things leaders in the church do and have done over the centuries, the church is still his church. And he'll take care of it. So, we've got to be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. So, peace. You have a great evening. And as we used to say in the Navy, don't jump overboard. It's bad.